Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to our meeting, Fracking Hell, What Will Shatter Shale Gas in the UK, which is supported by Artist Project Earth, for which we are very grateful. The technique of hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, for shale gas is taking off in the UK in what looks like it could be a very big way. This technology allows the exploitation of previously untappable reserves of natural gas trapped in relatively non-porous shale beds. As most of you will know already, it's big in the US, but it's caused a storm of protest there. You will have all heard the stories about flaming tap water, which inspired the Oscar-nominated film Gas Vans, and some of you may have even seen the film screening of the campaign organized. As the campaign against climate change, though, we're particularly concerned about fracking because it represents the exploitation of yet another unconventional source of fossil fuel, which has very serious implications, we believe, for the direction we are taking as a country in our struggle to prevent catastrophic climate change. I'm hoping that Professor Kevin Anderson will have a lot more to say on that shortly. In brief, we believe that battling against shale gas is one that has to be won in order to win the larger war against climate change. We very much hope that this meeting will be the beginning of a large and growing campaign against fracking. And to that end, as many of you will already be aware, we're organising a weekend camp, Camp Frack, actually next to one of the briefings near Blackpool. We have the permission of the landowner to do this, and the date of the weekend is the 17th to the 18th of September. We'll be passing around a sign-up sheet if anyone is interested and wants to be kept in the loop. We are very privileged this evening to have a fantastic lineup of speakers. First, unfortunately because she has to leave because of another early engagement, we have Caroline Lucas MP. Caroline is the UK's first Green MP and leader of the Green Party in England and Wales. She has supported the call for a moratorium on shale gas and condemned a report from the Energy and Climate Change Committee, which concluded there was no need for a moratorium. We'll have time for a few questions, if there are any, for Caroline before she has to leave. We also have Professor Kevin Anderson. Professor Kevin Anderson is the Director of the Tyndall Centre for Climate Change Research, which has recently produced a report, Shale Gas, a Provisional Assessment of Climate Change and Environmental Impacts, which recommends a moratorium on drilling shale gas in the UK. Kevin Anderson has also been outspoken on the need for scientists not to pull any punches in communicating the gravity of climate shock crisis to policy leaders. Michael Meacher, MP. Michael Meacher, Labour MP for Oldham West and Royston, was Minister of State for the Environment from 1997 to 2003. He's long represented the environmental conscience of the Labour Party, and has outlined in his book the case against shale gas. Phil Mitchell is the chair of the Blackpool Greens and has also done great work heading the local campaign against the exploratory drilling of shale gas that's already started in that area. Quadrilla Resources is already starting work with 2 drilling rigs in that area, the first in the UK. So now, without further ado, over to Caroline.
To be here. It's great to see you all here. I will just speak for a very few minutes as a way of introduction because I think people on the panel here are probably far more expert on the subject than I am, and indeed probably many of you are too. So I think a lot of the meeting hopefully will talk about some of the strategies we might use to actually combat fracking because it does represent a very real threat. It's yet another example of companies trying to cover themselves in greenwash, pretending that this is yet another solution to the climate crisis that we face. It's yet another dead end, it's yet another diversion, and I think we need to be very clear that the only thing that's green about it is the colour of the money that appears to be associated with it. The thing I wanted to talk about really was just some of the threats and some of the issues that I've tried to bring up with the government related to the threats associated with fracking, and which have been pretty much kicked into touch so far, so we need a much bigger campaign and much more pressure on the government to get it to act. But it's notable, I think, for example, that there's still an ongoing US Environmental Protection Agency investigation into the potential impact on water quality and public health from fracking, which is due to report in 2012. And one might have hoped that a government that says it's the greenest ever, cough cough, might have waited until the results of that impact assessment were known, for example, but not a bit of it. We're still ploughing ahead in this country. And so you'll know that the company Quadrilla has licenses for 4 sites in Lancashire, all of which were given formal approval by the government, and Energy Minister Charles Hendry has said publicly that he supports fracking. He's also said, in reply to a written parliamentary question that I put to him, that in the UK, shale gas has not yet been commercially proven. So he's supporting something in a very government not been proven in any serious way at all. Quadrilla recently suspended exploratory operations because of 2 earthquakes near its sites in Blackpool, and has said that the Energy and Climate Change Department will be involved in any decision to resume. Now that might sound like a positive pause, if you like, but DEC does seem pretty relaxed about the whole thing. Again, an answer to another parliamentary question. They claim, and I quote, "There is a strong regulatory safety and environmental regime in place, administered by the Health and Safety Executive, local authorities and relevant environmental agencies to ensure that potential risks to safety or the environment are properly managed. On the basis of available information, the Department sees no need for a moratorium on shale gas activities in the UK." Now that's quite interesting wording, on the basis of available information. I mean, if you've got a government that puts its head in the sand and doesn't look for any information, it may well be that on the basis of kind of no information, the Department sees no need for a moratorium. But if it were taking its job seriously, it would be looking at that information, that mounting information out there, which suggests that there are very real environmental risks associated with fracking. You only need to look at what's been happening in the US, for example, as well as the water contamination problems that have been widely reported in the US. There's also a risk of well blowouts. That's already happened twice in the US, including one occasion where natural gas and drilling fluids were shot 23 metres into the air. It's not just the pollution, though, it's also the use, yet more use of finite resources or scarce resources. Shale gas production is very water intensive as well. Estimates vary, with one report stating that each well would use 91,000 cubic metres of water, another putting it at a lower figure between 9,000 and 29,000 cubic metres will be needed. But to put that into perspective, an Olympic swimming pool holds an average of just 2,500 cubic metres of water. What we're talking about here is anywhere between 9,000 and 91,000 for each well. And that kind of uncertainty is common regarding fracking, the impact and potential of which are simply still not understood. And indeed, even the Energy Minister, Charles Hendry, uses phrases like, "it's too early to make estimates," or "it's speculative." And so I think it is deeply irresponsible for a department which will acknowledge when pushed that actually we know very little about this technology, to be at the same time giving its wholehearted support to it. Rather than adopting a precautionary approach that one might have hoped for, instead what we are having is a government which is basically encouraging a technology, taking what could be unacceptable risks with both the safety of our environment and nearby communities. Just a few more examples. Disposing of the fracking fluids, which are highly saline, contaminated with chemicals and a high mineral content, is yet another potential environmental hazard. And in the US, known carcinogens and heavy metals are used in fracking, and because of the large quantities involved, the risk of contamination is very high. Now, hydraulic fracturing technology was developed by Halliburton back in the 1940s. That's the same Halliburton that is closely linked with former US Secretary of Defense and Vice President Dick Cheney, and has in the past been charged with bribery, corruption, serious irregularities in connection with contracts in, for example, Iraq, Nigeria and Afghanistan. And it's Halliburton that are forging ahead with fracking in the US, and who successfully lobbied for a loophole in the 2005 Energy Bill, which exempted natural gas drilling from the Safe Drinking Water Act and companies from disposing of the chemicals used during hydraulic fracturing. It's Halliburton, too, that claim that they've invented a green fracking fluid, yet still refuses to completely disclose which chemicals are being used at which of its wells, so that communities can better protect themselves. So this greenwash essentially continues, and on both sides of the Atlantic, fracking technology is being promoted by some as an alternative to coal, even though there's very little known about its carbon footprint or potential supplies of shale gas. Charles Hendry, again, in a reply to a written question, says, "I have made no assessment of the greenhouse gas emissions of shale gas-related extraction." Marks. So the evidence from the US is that shale gas is being used simply to meet more and more energy demands rather than to save energy. And as I'm sure Kevin will say from the Tyndall Centre, there's very little to suggest that shale gas will play a key role in any kind of transition as a transition fuel in the move to a low-carbon economy. And so, in conclusion then, fracking is dirty, it's dangerous, and above all, it's unnecessary. And I think that the real tragedy of fracking, frankly, is that it is just such a distraction from the known technologies that we know that we need to be investing in now. You know, we don't need more dodgy technologies. What we do need is political commitment, political will to put investment into what we know works. In other words, the range of renewable energies which are still crying out for investment for energy efficiency that we know that we're going to need as we move forward. So, in conclusion, I just want to pay tribute particularly to Phil Mitchell and others in Blackpool, where the Green Party are really working with the local community to challenge this new threat to their livelihoods, to their communities. What I think we need is a national campaign to bring this issue to the fore, and I very much hope that this meeting here tonight will be the beginning of that national campaign.
We have a short amount of time for a few questions if anyone has any for Caroline. And the man in the blue shirt.
Thanks. My name is Justin Wolford. I'm from the Cooperative in Manchester. We're looking at putting together some national campaigning on fracking and gas shales in follow-up to the report that we commissioned for the 10% at the beginning of the year. And I just wanted to ask you, Caroline, it seems an obvious thing, at least at first glance, that from a public policy perspective, the best action the campaign can pursue would be to get people to contact their MPs or other elected representatives and ask them to support the call for a moratorium. I just wonder whether you agreed with that, or whether you thought there were other, perhaps, interim steps or milestones that we might prosecute within the campaign.
I think that is a very good first step. I'm not sure if there have been any EDMs so far on fracking, early day motions. I don't think there have, and that might be a good idea in the sense that it gives MPs something measurable to do. So rather than just calling on your MP to support a moratorium, the way that you can see whether or not they actually have would be, for example, if we put down something like an early day motion. We'll put down an early day motion together, so that's the first action point for the evening. But I would just say as well, don't underestimate the impact that it can have. I know it can seem a bit sort of, okay, we've got a massive great problem here and the answer is write a letter to your MP. It always seems a rather disproportionate response to a big problem. But along with all sorts of other things which I'm sure you will be doing, I do think that pressure on MPs does make a difference. If you're emailing, don't forget to put your address, because knowing that the person that's contacting you is a constituent really concentrates the minds of MPs as well. And I think